Hi, everyone, and welcome to the May 12th, 2020 edition of the Velero Community Meeting / Open Discussion. Today, we got some status updates per usual, and then we have some deep dive discussion topics. So I'm going to go through the status updates first, and then we're going to dive into the discussions. And I'll be sharing my screen here so you all can see what we're talking about as well. So first off, the status updates, we got Carlisia.
Hello. So Lotsa PR reviews last week for the 1.4 beta, and I am working on moving the current CRD for backup storage location into a kubebuilder format. And then with that, I would do an accompanying controller using kubebuilder. So what I want to do is make sure that all of that can be instantiated, loaded to the server, and run, alongside the other CRDs. And I pinged Vince real quick, and he said it should be possible. And so if I get that working, then I'm going to move the logic from the current controller, excuse me, that I have into this new one. And except the logic I have to find another place for it. And so that's what's on my deck, on my dock, to move the logic out of that controller and add the handlers to the query update events. That's it from me.
Awesome. Any questions, comments for Carlisia?
Good question. Is that gonna, are you gonna do that in the PR that you have that's going currently? It's gonna be a separate PR.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, good question. My goal is I created a brand new branch. My goal is to get the BSL CRD working as it is today. So the behavior should be the same. And then if you all review and that gets merged, then I'll add the new controller and go from there.
Okay, that makes sense. And yeah, I think that'll make it easier kind of looking back to see what were the changes required to actually migrate the controller into kubebuilder. Yeah, which will be helpful.
Yeah, that and also this is the one test to see if this exercise works. If we get the same behavior, just with under the hood things that are in different places.
All right. Anything else for Carlisia? Okay. Ashish, you're up.
For me, I was doing kind of getting ready with PRs and getting things merged for the 1.4 release. One of the things that you can do with the 1.4 release is pass feature flags when you install Velero. So Velero adds, when we add new features in beta stages, we add it behind a feature flag. And we didn't have a way to, though we had support for feature flags, we didn't have a way for it to be expressed on the CLI. So I added some support to do that. And then the work on getting CSI integration ready to go was something that I did last week. And then I also set up a GitHub Actions job to build and push our images for the CSI plugin. So we were using we use Travis to do this for the other repos. Now because Travis is probably end of life or end of support, we want to move to GitHub Actions. I got this done for the CSI plugin. Hopefully we should be able to do this for the other repos as well. So that's another thing that I did last week, and I think that's all I got to share.
Great. Any questions, comments for Ashish? Do you need any help with the GitHub Actions for the other repositories?
No, I think it should all be pretty straightforward. Now that we have like a bot account set up for in Docker Hub for this specifically. So
Yep. Let me know if you want to split that up so that we can get that done a little bit faster.
yeah,
We should just be able to use the CSI one as a template.
yeah.
And
It's all pretty much the same. Make targets.
Right.
I think it's for the core Velero, it may be different because we ship multiple architectures.
right.
I
think the AWS plugin recently merged thing to build ARM as well. That one may be the only one that's the oddball, but we can talk about that separately. But yeah, for the 1.5 timeframe, I'd love to help you tackle this. But it sounds like since the Velero CSI plugin didn't really have images being generated anyway, it was a good one to start with.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm on community support this week, so I'll probably try to backfill some of the work with the community support.
That sounds great. Thank you, Ashish. Steve, you want to talk about the new beta?
Yeah, we've sort of alluded to it already, but just to make sure everyone's clear, so we released the 1.4 beta, the first beta on Friday. So that is out there. The container images are published. So if you go to the GitHub release that Jonas has up here, it'll have all the information on where to get the downloads, how to upgrade, and all the changes that are in there. So we're definitely super excited to get this out and into the hands of everybody. It's got the CSI snapshot support in beta form that we've been talking about a lot. And that's kind of the big feature that we have in here, but we have a whole bunch of other good stuff. We have custom CA support, thanks to Dylan and Sam from Red Hat, and backup progress reporting, and a bunch of other features in here as well. So definitely check it out if you can. We encourage you to use it in your non-production environments, and do some testing, and send us any feedback you have through GitHub or on Slack. But so my last week was definitely focused on just tying up all the loose ends to get this out. And this coming week, starting to look at 1.5 planning and sort of figuring out what we want to tackle in the next release. This will be a short week for me, so it won't be getting too much more done on that, but we'll pick that up again next week. And yeah, I don't think I really have anything else to mention today.
All right. Any questions, comments for Steve? Okay. Nolan.
Yeah, so last week was mostly trying to get the 1.4 beta out. So I was on community support, but as Ashish alluded to, I was a little bit behind on the GitHub issues. So I'm going to try to help him get those answered. But this week is going to be a lot of blog and docs writing. There's a few issues that are for writing some docs that we want to get out with the 1.4 release, but they weren't really blocking the beta. I'm also going to catch up on some reviews. I'd really like to take a look at the restore hooks document that Mark Campbell's put up. And also I'll be testing out the complete 1.4 beta package, just because this will be the first time we've gotten to sit down and test it as a whole. I know Steve has done some testing. I saw an issue this morning around some formatting of the Velero backup describe command. But definitely invite folks to play around with that if they can. The CSI feature will be behind a feature flag. So we don't anticipate that to affect normal operation if you're not using it, but we still invite folks to play around with the beta. And if you're interested in CSI support on your platform, definitely give this a shot on your non-production environments. And I think that's all I've got.
For the testing here, Nolan, do we have a document outlining what you are testing if anyone else wanted to test in their environment?
I was intending to put together a wiki page. We had recently activated the GitHub wiki. I was intending to put together a little wiki page with a maybe a table of the versions I was intending to test and the platforms. So not every major provider has gotten their CSI driver out there yet. I know I'm following an issue with Google that they haven't brought their CSI driver with the beta snapshotting APIs up to their stable release yet. But yeah, I intend to get a document out, and I'll try to publicize that once I get there.
That sounds great. If not for the 1.4 release, then maybe we'll have something for the 1.5. So
yeah.
Awesome.
Another quick thing.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Another quick thing that I was going to mention was if you are going to get started with CSI integrations and are running issues with your setup, feel free to reach out to us. We can help you there and kind of give you some pointers.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions for Nolan? All right, then we're going to dive into the discussion topics. And we have a big one up front here. Stephanie.
Hey everyone. So we received a few feature requests in GitHub that I'll be kind of sharing on the screen here around restoring restic volumes by default. So effectively including all volumes to be restored by restic and then providing mechanisms for exclusion. But still retaining the same feature functionality and behavior that's expected for existing users of the restic plugin, wherein by you would exclude the volumes to be restored by default and then annotate those volumes you'd like to include. So Jonas, is it all right if I share my screen here?
Sorry, absolutely. Go ahead.
Great. All right. So let's see. So this is the feature request that we received, issue number 1871. It's related to issue 605 and I believe 2375. But at the bottom of the issue, you'll see we've provided links to the topic in the agenda as well as a detailed products requirement. I'm going to click through onto the detailed products requirement. This is just a 10,000-foot view of what the requirement is, some of the business driver background, strategic fit, the feature capabilities, use cases, and requirements. But for more detail, we thought that it would be valuable to also show an example of what the experience could look like in terms of some example annotations. So the first case that is explored in the detailed requirements document is the current behavior, which is the opt-in to restic backups. And I want to say thanks to Steve Chris here, who provided the example annotations that we're showing on the screen now. So you'll see here that this is the opt-in to restic backups, the pod definition spec, as well as the Velero command for creating the backup. And this is what you should essentially see as a result. I should note that in some of these cases, though, some of the flags are going to be example flags and may not be what we actually use in the definition when it's complete, but this is just to kind of illustrate what the experience will look like. So after a user has opted into the backup, case 2 would be essentially the new behavior, which is to back up the volumes with restic by default. So the definition here would be to provide a pod definition as well as the spec to back up all of the volumes. The Velero command is indicated here. And the results are that, the result is shown here. Case 3 would be for the new behavior for snapshotable volumes included. The pod definition is included here. So you're taking, annotating the various volumes as well as providing the spec. And we are assuming that there is a volume snapshotter that can be backed up at volume 1. And we're showing examples of the Velero command as well as the results. So if there are any questions on the 10,000 foot view of the requirements spec, or if you have any feedback to share or any questions about what the experience could look like, please feel free to let us know. We're very interested in hearing back from everyone. And we are planning to work on this as part of the 1.5 release.
I had a kind of a high level question about this. And this is kind of relating, because right now we're using it where we have it giving users a choice to either use restic or snapshot volumes. So, and with the current behavior, that means, you know, for restic, we put the annotation on there, and if we're not putting the annotation, then the behavior is snapshotting. And one thing I was realizing was there may be a case for a third situation of explicitly, I don't want to back this up either via snapshotting or restic. I'm not sure if that fits into this kind of redesign scheme where, you know, if you're opting in, you know, saying restic is the default now, but there's really two choices if you don't want to use restic. Either you want to use the snapshotter or you want to leave the volume alone and not back it up. Is that going to be explicit in this as one possibility?
Can you achieve that using labels?
There is a exclude label.
Yeah.
You can say, don't back this up at all.
Yeah, so instead of doing it at the volume level, which is what this feature might be at, you do it at the actual pod level.
I guess the one of the use cases that we have is where we're actually backing up the Kubernetes resource, but we don't necessarily want to copy the bits, and because we have a use case for migration, what we're calling a move, like if you have an NFS volume, where instead of backing up that volume and restoring it to your new cluster that you're restoring to, we just back up the PVC and PV and restore that. And because it's an NFS volume, it's just pointing to that external server. So we want the Kubernetes resource to be backed up and restored, but not actually copying the image bits or snapshotting. And for NFS, it's fine because there's no volume snapshotter. So that's but we realized that for EBS volumes, for example, when we were trying to just move the definition to a new cluster, we're actually snapshotting. And because there's not really a way to tell Velero, back this resource up, but don't snapshot it.
Yeah, so we don't really have a way to control that. I think it's probably a separate feature. I mean, because that's, you know, you can control with the annotations whether or not to get a restic backup. So it sounds like the missing piece is just an annotation to control whether to take a snapshot if you're not taking a restic backup, and there is a volume snapshotter that could snapshot that volume.
And again, that doesn't really belong to this change. I'm just thinking in the context of this change because because right now you have an annotation for restic, or if there's no annotation, you do a snapshot, and this change might reverse that. So you know, no annotation means restic. Annotation says, hey, skip this, which means volume snapshotter. But I'm just wondering in this do not back up annotation, if there's some way of signaling, you know, to Velero, you know, use a snapshotter for this one, or just don't use a snapshotter for this one.
I mean, I think we could definitely look at adding that. I would probably consider it a separate.
It makes sense.
Separate feature request, separate PR, but we could definitely look at adding it.
Okay, but I guess that if we were going to consider that, that would be kind of after this got merged, because that would be definitely related functionality, and you'd want to build on to whatever the new thing is, rather than something that's soon to be legacy.
I think so. I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
Another thing that I've heard people ask for is snapshotting NFS volumes themselves, like as part of backup. So that just came to mind when you were mentioning leave the NFS volumes alone and we will just back up Kubernetes resources. That's all.
All right, Stephanie, was there anything else you wanted to add here?
No, that's it for me, Jonas. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Yeah, so please comment on the document here, and yeah, let us know if you have any questions or comments. Next up for discussion topics, we have Vita, who's on the call, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. My first one is about how do we show the progress of backup, the restore that is happening from the Velero plugins. Any way right now we have to, or like something which need to be designed?
So the backup progress feature that we're including in 1.4 doesn't have any way for plugins to indicate progress. I mean, we're basically taking an approach of trying to count the number of Kubernetes resources that we're going to back up, and then providing updates on how many of them have been backed up so far.
Yeah.
So if there is more complex logic going on in a plugin, we don't currently have a way to surface that. It's certainly something we could look at, but it's not something that's currently on our radar.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the progress is like going to be a phased approach. Like this is probably the bare minimum we can do, and then we need to move on to things like plugins reporting their progress and volumes is probably going to be part of that.
Okay. Yeah.
I would just to close the loop on that, I would say if you're interested in that, definitely file an issue with the kind of the enhancement request, and we can go from there. And if you're interested in working on a design doc for it, we'd be happy to kind of help you work through that.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely agree here. Same thing for Scott's thing earlier too. Anything that anyone wants to have additional features, file a ticket, put the business justification there, enable the rest of the community to come in and say +1. Yes, I love that as well. And the more momentum we get on some features, and the more likely we are to prioritize them higher because they're important to a lot of people. And if any one of you is interested in helping us develop this, obviously we'll be jumping up and down, and we'll help enable you to get some of these things in.
Sure, got it. Thanks, yeah, Mike. So, and in similar lines, I have, again, you can say it is up for regarding backup and restore progress for plugins. So usually plugins may have their own CRs. If we take the case of OpenEBS, we have a Velero plugin. We have the plugin for our C-store engine. So we have backup, we have two CRs, custom resources, basically C-store backup and C-store restore. The two CRs are there where we update the progress. The plugin updates the progress. So if these details can be synced to the, okay, the main need of this progress is like for others to know that what is happening. So, and at the same time, like at the restore side, we won't be knowing these CRs. So we don't know how much is the backup size. So the point here is like, can we sync up the resources the way currently BSL controller syncs few of the PVB kind of things to the object storage, and then they again sync back to the destination side regularly at regular intervals, right? So is there a way to like, okay, these are the other few CRs I want to keep sending it to object and keep syncing on the destination side? Do we have such kind of thing? Or?
We don't have a generic mechanism for arbitrary plugins to say that they want their own custom resources to be synced, kind of like those built-in ones are. Again, it's something we could look at adding. We have talked about, ways to enable plugins to provide more kind of arbitrary data like that might fit into the Velero plugin in ways other than just going into the tarball.
Right.
But yeah, we don't have that capability today.
Okay. So this should be also helpful actually kind of to the first one, the backup restore progress. So probably I can work on the second one if it makes sense. I can write the way we can have a generic way of sending the CRs.
Yeah, I would again start by filing an enhancement request, and that gives us a form to continue discussing.
Sure, sure. So the third one I have is on the finalizers for backup shares. Basically, this is about again coming to the OpenEBS store, the Velero plugin. So it provides incremental nature due to the ZFS in the background it is using. So the backups which happens are incremental, and so the one is dependent on other one. So it's like even if you have something broken in between, got deleted in between by user creating the delete volume request, I mean that kind of CR. So this request is about like finalizers on the CRs, so that if there's a finalizer honoring it, like not to get deleted, even the CR and as well as the data on the object. Does that make sense?
So I think by default, our backups are not incremental, and they are like one-time they're like full snapshots, and we have expiration on those backups, and we do intend to delete them when their time to live is up. So are you talking about your custom resources, or are you talking about
The OpenEBS, the plugin has incremental nature. So it takes care of sending the incremental data from the previous whatever it backed up. So it takes care of.
Are you talking about the scenario where, as part of Velero backup, we take a backup of OpenEBS stuff, which is an incremental backup and not a full snapshot, and
Right,
later on, when the Velero backup expires, the OpenEBS CRs also get deleted as part of it? Is that what the problem is?
So basically, when the schedule is there, Velero schedule, so the plugin takes care of sending the base backup and the full backup or the incrementals. It takes care of it to the S3, to the object storage. So the point is in between, if user deletes any backup, so being their incremental nature, they can't be restored. What will happen? So the point is, like, if you have finalizer and you make sure that the data doesn't get deleted on the S3 due to the object storage on the CR also, backups, whatever backup series what I'm talking about here. So if you have that, so it's kind of protection, like the data is not lost on the object storage.
So, I mean, you can certainly put finalizers on the backup CRs today. That's not something that any of the Velero controllers will do.
Right.
I'm not totally clear on what you're envisioning as far as, who's removing those finalizers and at what times.
Yeah, so actually we have an operator also over the CRs. Basically, let's say there's a finalizer on the Velero backup CR. The point is, when we have this delete volume request comes in, the data can get deleted on the object storage, right? So I want to, I'm thinking of as a protection to the feature request is like the protection not to delete this data. So there's a finalizer on it.
So, okay. So are you saying in our deletion controller that we would need to look and see if there's a finalizer on the CR, and if so, not try to start deleting things from object storage?
Perfect. Exactly. That's a requirement, Steve.
I got you, because we don't actually try to delete the CR until the last step of the deletion process. But by that point, we may have actually deleted all the underlying data. Yeah, we'll have to think about this a little bit more, but I understand the scenario. I'd say, file another feature request, and we can keep discussing. I don't know exactly what an appropriate solution would look like here, but I do get the use case.
Sure, Steve. I think my idea of bringing up this is like, I want to see like if something already exists, or like, I got it. Sure. It makes sense to have a document with all the enhancements, and I'll do that.
Okay. Sounds good. Sure.
All right. Do we have any other topics that anyone wants to discuss on the call today?
This is Dylan. I just briefly wanted to mention, I want to introduce another person on the call, Ali Patel from Red Hat. You guys have been working with me, Scott, and Sam in the past, but Sam has moved on to a different project. So Ali's been working with us in the next coming months. And I think we mentioned on like a couple of community calls back, one of the big features that we're looking to start working on, I don't know when, but probably in the next month or two, is the worker pod design stuff. So I'm sure you'll see Ali working on that front a little bit too. So just wanted to briefly introduce him.
Thanks, Dylan, for the introduction. Yeah, this is one of my first community calls, so looking forward to working with this community. Thanks.
Awesome. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thanks.
And just on the worker pods, it's something that we're definitely interested in as well. So, you know, we'll definitely have to start talking some more about that.
Yeah, I'm hoping maybe in like 2 weeks, we can actually put together a separate meeting for it, since it's kind of a loaded topic. But it's just kind of been on the back burner for us. But I think it's become more important in probably a month or so.
Okay. Yeah, I think it definitely merits a dedicated call, potentially a series of calls going forward. So
yeah, sounds
let's
good.
do that.
Great. Thanks.
All right. With that, I think we're at the end of the discussion topics. That means that we are at the end of the meeting. We're gonna do a bunch of contributor shoutouts next week. We're gonna collect all of them for the next release and stuff like that. So thank you all for joining today. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and see you all next week. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.